Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. We have a current issues panel with us today, a regular feature here on the show. And today we're covering many issues, including whether or not students will be returning to in-person learning this January, and specifically university and college students. New COVID measures for parts of the country, especially for Quebec and Ontario. Some challenges to the military's vaccine mandate, a potential change to the gay blood donation ban, and potentially the first baby safe box, which is happening in southern Alberta. Joining me now, lots to discuss, of course, as usual, and joining me to help unpack it all are political commentators Hannah Salamon-Vegh and Brock Stephenson. Welcome, Brock. Welcome, Hannah. Thank you for coming back on. Okay, so lots to unpack now. I want to start with a good news item because so much that we cover is so negative and cynical and dreary. But here's a really nice one. Hope's Crate is this new program affiliated with the Strathmore Fire Station, which is creating an opportunity for, I guess, mothers who can't take care of their babies to kind of offer them up in a safe and anonymous way. Hannah, I'll let you handle this one at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's very beautiful, a very positive thing for Canada. I know that these safe boxes are more common in the US, so I'm really happy to hear that this is happening in Canada now. And I know especially during this time, there are a lot of parents who are under a lot of financial stress, a lot of duress, and better have their baby be put in a safe box to be cared for by people that are able to care for the baby instead of it being abused or killed or worse things that we've seen here. And the cool thing about this box, as soon as the baby's put in there, it's in a very heated bassinet inside of there, and then an alarm goes off and the firefighters are notified that the baby is in there, and then they're able to take care of the baby accordingly. So definitely a very positive move here in Canada. I hope we see more of them.
Yes. Brock, do you have any insights or thoughts on this?
It's always better to have more ways to allow for a child to be adopted. A family that loves a child is something that everyone should have. And I think that that's an advantage. Good on the Strathmore Fire Department for partnering with this organization. I think that's a good first step, and I'm sure we'll see more of these in the future.
Yes, I was very happy to read about this, and I think there should be more of them. Of course, my mind always then turns to, well, yes, this is an opportunity for parents who, I guess, can't continue with their child for whatever reasons, but what parent really does give up their kid? Usually there's some supports issues, some mental health issues, or something else is at play. And sometimes I wonder, yes, while temporarily we might be able to help them, is it not more long-term beneficial to actually help the parent take care of their child and see what supports they need? Hannah?
Yeah, so I think all of these things are important, especially, mental health support for, women who are on the street or single mothers, people who are addicted to drugs, that type of thing. So obviously, if the baby can be kept with the family and there can be remedial work done and the environment becomes safe for the child, that is the goal. But there's just some women, they don't know what to do with their baby. They don't have support. They don't have help. So it'll be interesting to see the number of babies that come in. Obviously, we hope it's not a ton because we want them to still be with their families. But like I said, it's better for the baby to be safe in there instead of dead.
Okay, well, let's pivot gears now. Unfortunately, we're going right into COVID. It's COVID season. Universities are considering delaying in-person learning. I think we were close to getting back to being in person. What happened here, Brock? What happened?
I think that you've got universities trying to figure out what to do, and they clearly don't. And that's the first problem. You've got Ryerson University in Toronto that's got over 3,000 students that are going to be unenrolled because they're not vaccinated. You've got other universities that are plowing ahead in the other extreme. UBC is just finishing up their fall exams in person. Some students are panicking and complaining because there's been cases of COVID in their class. So you're getting both extremes. I think you're going to see more online learning continue. I think that's a disadvantage to students. But as we eventually become more aware of how to live in a COVID world, I think the universities will have to figure out how to return to classrooms because people are not going to pay full price to do Zoom classes forever.
Right. Hannah, what are your thoughts on this? Was it premature for universities even to consider coming back in person? We have 30 seconds before commercial.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm at Western and we had a perfectly good fall semester, and that was when we were living through the Delta variant. So we had 20 something cases in residence, and the university kept saying they were all because of off-campus behavior, nothing to do with being in university classrooms or in residence. And Western, as well as many other universities, are boasting that they have a 99% vaccination rate. So shouldn't it be safe to continue in person? I think a lot of it is virtue signaling and trying to appear in line with what the people want.
Okay, I'm going to pause you there. I want to pick this up just when we come back from the commercial break. More current events on us, and with us we have our current events panel, Hannah Salamon-Vegh and Brock Stephenson. Hannah, just before we went to commercial break, you were unpacking some of the concerns with, I guess, all the COVID mandates at universities. Continue your thought.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how students respond to having to go back online. I know some students are being conditioned to constantly be irrationally afraid of COVID, and that's not a healthy thing. And at my university, in particular, that's only really what I can speak to from firsthand experience, but we only had a few cases in residence, nothing associated with classrooms or anything like that. And we were told we had to get this high vaccination rate in order to return safely in person, which we did for an entire semester. And now, because of all the media hype around the Omicron variant, which doesn't pose much risk at all to people my age who are in university, now we have to all of a sudden go online again and be delayed 1 week. And then we're still gonna have to end at the same time. So we keep having our semesters be shaved, be going online, and still having to pay the same amount of tuition. So definitely this semester will be interesting to see how students respond and then how universities continue. Because if we spend the entire next semester online, I don't think a lot of students will be happy with that.
Well, and I think this is all the yo-yoing is very stressful. I think that's almost more anxiety than the virus itself, if you will. Because you want to know what to anticipate. And it's been like 2 years of a holding pattern. What's going to happen? When announcements happening when? And it's a lot of anxiety, I know, for parents and children. Can't imagine university students who are trying to make their own path in the world, and what world that will be, we don't know. So my hat's off to all the university students who are trying their very, very best. But yeah, I can't see any of these universities taking on that liability for in-person learning, because it all seems to be about liability. Who's going to get the blame for what spread of who knows what? Okay, let's pivot to provincial measures. And this could be part of what's spawning or encouraging a lot of this cancellation of in-person learning is, with Omicron, the new variant, or some call it the scariant upon us. Yes, the rapid cases doesn't seem to be as serious, not really a spike in hospitalizations. Maybe that's the dream virus we should all get so that we can all build immunity. Who knows? I don't know. Well, let's see what the experts say. But with this Omicron variant, now we're having to kind of re-enter the world of lockdowns again. Let's start with Quebec. Quebec went really aggressive just last week. Bars, churches, many other venues, a 50% capacity. The Habs canceled fans from watching their game right on that night. Churches even, vaccine mandates to enter a church. This is a first. I know New Brunswick tried it. Brock, what do you think about all of these things happening in Quebec?
Quebec's struggling. I think they're unsure of how to proceed. And that's sort of the way we've been since we had a large part of adult population be vaccinated. It's been a 70% plus since summer. We've ticked up a few points towards 90 nationally over the last 5 months, but nothing's really improved. Governments don't know how to deal with the issue. They've lost the goodwill of a larger share of the public. I think most people went along with it when it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, but we're now month 22 and governments don't know how to deal with the issue. The politicians and the public health leadership don't know how to keep the goodwill of people.
My goodness. Well, Hannah, some have complained that Quebec in particular has been quite heavy-handed with some of their measures, their COVID lockdown measures. I remember checkpoints were even a thing at one point outside of Montreal. They wanted to protect the elderly in the eastern townships, so on and so forth. But vax mandates to enter a place of worship, this, I know this was attempted in New Brunswick, and I think they backed down from that, as New Brunswick seems to have on several things. But this is the thing. This happened in Quebec.
Yes, I don't know how our politicians and health officials are not worried about losing the trust of the people, and people kind of catching on to the fact that every time we're told if we do this, if we reach this percentage of vaccination rate, if we shut down, if we have circuit breakers, every time we're told if we do this, then we can go back to normal, then restrictions will be lifted. Every single time we're told that and we do what we're supposed to do, the exact opposite happens. We just get more restrictions, which we've seen throughout history with tyrannical governments. The more power you give them, the less individual responsibility and freedom people have, the bigger government grows. And I think the big issue is just government and public health. They need to leave people alone. And especially here in Ontario, with firing healthcare workers, if you're worried about hospital capacity and overwhelming the ICU and all that type of thing, the last thing you need to do is fire 10,000 hospital staff here in Ontario. And then in Quebec and northern New Brunswick, trying to now have the vaccine passport for church, still with extremely limited capacity. In New Brunswick, trying it with grocery stores. Thankfully, New Brunswick there was pushback against that in New Brunswick. But basically, we're seeing the government will go as far as the people will allow. They're always trying to test. If the people push back, like with Doug Ford's carding and police stopping thing that he did last year and shutting down playgrounds, the people push back. So immediately the government steps back. It's all, the power is still in the people's hands to say enough is enough. We've done what you told we need to do, and you need to stop fearing the boogeyman.
Okay, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. We're discussing the latest COVID restrictions in Quebec, and we'll talk about Ontario in just a moment. I want to say one more thing on Quebec. I don't recall seeing vaccine mandates or ever in a church where you can't physically enter the church. I've seen it happen with church halls. I know certain jurisdictions in which pastors or rabbis or bishops have said, no, you cannot preach or participate as a priest or bishop or something if you are not vaccinated. That's their own thing. But to have the state say, no, we're going to bar entry into this place of worship if you're not vaccinated, and what? They're going to expect the clergy and the rabbis and the imams to enforce that? I mean, this seems quite shocking, especially for most religions which say, kind of you make up your own healthcare choices. I find this quite shocking, quite disturbing. Let's pivot to Ontario. So we don't have vax mandates from the government for churches yet, but there were huge restrictions announced. The government suggesting that you not gather with more than 10. Right before the holidays, this was announced. Brock, what do you make of all this?
I think the government is trying to find something to do, and a lot of the times they don't know what to do. And this is what you get when you're not sure of what to do. There's fear in Ontario that the school system's not reopening after the Christmas holidays. Mm-hmm. And kids are going to be forced back onto tablets and computers for a few weeks or maybe months. During the first phase of COVID, school kids in Ontario lost 7.5 months of in-person class time. Kids are falling behind. You've got a society that is isolated. People are tired. They've done what they've been asked to do. They've been promised, as Hannah said, that things will return to normal. And it seems like this is our new normal, and there's no sign of it ending until someone finally figures out a way to make COVID be endemic and figure out how to get society back and functioning at a tolerable level.
But, Hannah, I feel like we're just spinning our wheels. You both have expressed that the more power, in some ways, that the government keeps doing this kind of repeat, wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Mm-hmm. Nothing seems to be improving. Brock, you said very interestingly that, when the government doesn't know what to do, they just do something. And they're doing something, but there are real life impacts here. We know about the mental health tolls. We know about the spike in suicides. We know about the opioid crisis. But we're talking about now families and children and their schooling being disrupted again. They're not going to their place of worship, which for some is a big mental health support. How can this continue, Hannah? And what do you think it'll take for the government to kind of step back and say, maybe we don't know really what's going on and we've got to listen to the people more?
It'll have to be a revolt. And I know that sounds very dramatic for us passive Canadians, but it'll have to be a revolt, and the people have to say enough is enough, and Doug Ford's going to have to start thinking about, re-election. And unfortunately, he's probably looking at the polls and enough Ontarians are still okay with this, but I hope this Christmas is going to break people. Unfortunately, I have to say that it's going to break people and realize that you don't have to listen to the government to go visit your family. And I mean, the Dr. Kirian Moore here in Ontario is saying that if your grandparent has 3 doses of the vaccine and you only have 2, you can only visit them outside in the freezing cold. I mean, how is that good for anybody's health? These people are they lost their minds. They're too self-important. And the solution to them is to be put down a notch and realize that the power that they have is only from us. And the people have to say enough is enough. We need to go back to normal. And the issue is they're constantly using the justification that the hospitals are going to be overwhelmed and we have all these cases and stuff. But every day when the number of cases are announced, it's in a few hundreds or whatever, there's only like one new death or two new deaths. You have to look at the deaths and the hospitalizations. And here in Ontario, there's only 284 people in the hospital who've tested positive with COVID, and about 109 of those are in ICU. And all of the hospital executives and our, public health people, I wish they use this time to actually improve hospital capacity, have more beds, figure out the hospital situation, and instead of constantly using our hospital capacity as a threat to people that it's going to be overwhelmed, so therefore you have to stay home. How do we fix the hospitals and allow people to live their lives?
Well, and we all know that overcrowded ERs and hallway healthcare, which is actually, I think, a term that Doug Ford tried to coin, has always been a problem. We've always had a problem with capacity. And of course, they naturally go high in the wintertime when we have high cold and flu season. Pivot for a moment. We have 4 Canadian military members who are challenging a vaccine mandate in court. Brock, tell us what's happening here. We have about 30 seconds before commercial.
They're challenging being vaccinated to keep their active duty role. And I think that this is yet another case where we've got an occupation where there's not enough people. And the courts are going to have to decide. Unfortunately, in this case, I think the soldiers are out on their own. They don't have a union representing them in this case. And I think it's going to be a tough struggle for them to make their case. But if they're ruling out 10% of society, it's tough.
Okay, I'm going to come right back to you after this commercial, Brock. Welcome back. Brock, just before commercial break, we were discussing this legal challenge from 4 Canadian military members. Now, there's only 4, but I'm sure they're representative of thousands who have said, no, I'm not disclosing my personal health information, or I'm not going to tell you if I'm vaxxed or not, or I'm not going to get the vaccine. I've seen that some of them are challenging for health reasons, some are challenging for information reasons, and some are challenging on religious grounds. Do you think they will be successful? You mentioned they're not represented by union. That's interesting. Do you think they will have success?
I think they've got a big fight on their hands. In the beginning, when these vaccine passports came in, there was a little bit of noise about people being concerned about their health record privacy. There were rumors of a breach in one province already that the government said was okay, but I think that they've got a tough fight on their hands, and for a variety of reasons, they're trying to make their case. But I don't know if the court system will give them their due argument and let them have a say and keep their jobs. We'll see. Okay,
Hannah, do you have a quick comment on this?
I'll just say that Canada likes to. We like to brag here in Canada that we're inclusive, we're diverse, all that type of thing. Like Brock said, the 10% of society that said they don't want the vaccine, why can't we just leave them alone? If we're actually an inclusive and tolerant society, and we already have herd immunity here in Canada, why not leave them alone? Why not act like our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution actually exists, and the Ontario Human Rights Code, and respect people's individual choice, especially when it comes to healthcare workers, people in the military and the RCMP that are very, very hard to replace, especially people who've been there for many years.
Well, okay, we're going to pivot on another aspect of healthcare with respect to the blood donation policy that right now prohibits essentially those who are engaged in homosexual activity, gays, from donating blood. And it's called the gay blood ban. And this has been enacted for many, many years. So Canadian Blood Services has requested to Health Canada, who set the policy, to now change the policy so that will no longer ban or it will no longer ask the question about did you have sexual activity with another man if you're a man. They want to kind of broaden out to say, ask questions about, I guess, higher risk sexual activity or high risk sexual activity in general. Hannah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think that definitely the ban will be gotten rid of, but they can't just rely on asking people questions. They have to make sure that all the blood is being rigorously tested, which it seems like it is. It's only been kind of like in third world countries and countries where they don't have rigorous enough testing facilities and standards, where some people have contracted HIV through blood transfusions. But I mean, like the CDC said in 2018 that 69% of gay and bisexual people were responsible for the new HIV cases in the US. So definitely gay and bisexual people have a higher rate of HIV, but for anybody who's donating blood, they could have HIV and for various reasons. And it's important for us not to just rely on questions being asked, but the blood being tested so people can feel confident when they're getting blood donations.
Brock, do you have a comment on this?
This problem's been going on for almost 4 decades. The Krieger inquiry came in a quarter century ago with some decisions on it. Governments for the last 24 years have failed to act. Justin Trudeau ran on this 6 years ago. Good on MP Eric Duncan for pushing him on this. But I think the real issue is that we got into this problem because of government foot dragging, cover-ups by the previous agency, the Canadian Red Cross, who were responsible before. I think we need to show that there's rigorous testing, encourage people to give blood. We got into this problem because we had a blood shortage and blood was being imported from US prisons in the 1980s. I think that's where we're getting cases of HIV and hepatitis C that caused this whole inquiry a quarter century ago. I think that's the big challenge is rigorous testing, transparency, and that's what's lacking. Let's get this sorted out and continue to encourage people to give blood.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't understand this ban. I never really did. Just don't you test all the blood the same way and not just rely on somebody's questionnaire and how they filled it out to tell you maybe this one might be high risk or this one might be low risk? Assume everybody's high risk donor and test it rigorously. I would like to have confidence that the blood is being tested and not held and not have a scapegoat of somebody's questionnaire. I don't like that at all. So I appreciate that this policy may have been brought in when maybe we didn't have such high technology to screen the blood. I find it absurd that we still have these kinds of bans on anything. Just screen the blood, test it properly so that we all know what we're getting and we all know that it is safe to receive. I think that's how we restore the faith of the populace. We're out of time. Always a pleasure to have you on today, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you so much, Hannah and Brock.
Thank you.
Thanks.
As usual, lots of interesting topics we covered today. Lots to think about, especially as we head into this new year. What it brings, who will know? For Counterpoint, I'm Tanya Granick-Allen.